I'm back with another review, and today talking about and reviewing Jaws 2. Now, I enjoyed this film. Yes, it's not as great as Jaws. It is a step down, but I still enjoy the sequel, and I feel in some ways it's underrated. Now, the story here, the plot, you have Roy Scheider, he's back as Chief Brody, and the beginning of the film, it opens up with these two divers. And the score, I don't mind the score. It's a different score, but I liked it. Not as great as the score from the first movie. That iconic theme, but I still like the score here. And like I said, these two divers in the beginning, they discover the orca, and soon they're attacked by another shark. So now you have a new shark, terrorizing the community, and you have the mayor back who doesn't believe, Chief Brody once again, which I'll talk about that. Um, but, in this film, it takes more of a different direction because it focuses more on the kids, where you have Chief Brody's kids of Michael and Sean, and these other teenagers. You have Keith Gordon in here, yeah, who would later be on, who would later be in Christine and Back to School. And these kids are in some parts of the film, are going sailing. And you have some supporting players back from the first movie, like Lorraine Gary, who's the wife of Chief Brody. You have the deputy Hendricks, who is played by Jeffrey Kramer. He's back in this film. And like I said, the mayor, once again played by Murray Hamilton. He doesn't believe Chief Brody that there's another shark out there. And but soon enough, when the kids, they go out sailing, well, even before that, I forgot to mention, you do have a couple of kills in between. I mean, you can talk about the scene with the water skier where the shark, eats the water skier. And then in that same scene where he attacks the boat and the woman, pours gasoline all over the boat and the shark, and the boat blows up. And then at that point, the shark gets scarred up, and he's pretty much Freddy Krueger. So you got, the Freddy Krueger shark, which is a memorable aspect of the film. He looks like Freddy Krueger. So, soon after that, and Roy Scheider's character, Chief Brody, he knows there's another shark out there. And, in the last, hour of the film, it's pretty much these teenagers, they're going out sailing, and soon they're being pursued by the shark. And it's up to Chief Brody to stop the shark and save the kids. And that's kind of the plot here. And like I said, I do enjoy Jaws 2, and I do feel it's underrated. Now, of course, Roy Scheider, he didn't want to come back for this, but he was locked in the contract. And I want to get the information right because, I know he didn't want to come back. And it says right here, Roy Scheider, did not originally want to appear in the film, but he had recently left The Deer Hunter, which led to conflicts with Universal because he was locked in a contract. And in order to forgive his leaving, backing out of The Deer Hunter, he would do this film. Scheider agreed to the terms, but was resentful of his involvement from onset, and he would often clash with the director. And this director here, get my camera back up. Janot's work. Now, I was looking at his filmography, and it seems like he's directed a lot of TV stuff. Later, I think before this, he directed some episodes of Kojak, and he would work a lot on TV shows and stuff. But I didn't mind his direction here. You can say, in a way, it's more of a slasher because in that last hour or so, it's about the shark, pursuing the teenagers and, going after the teenagers, including Keith Gordon. Like I said, he would be in Christine, and you throw in, his kids, Chief Brody's kids in the film, Mike and Sean, who are out there sailing as well, and they're being pursued by the shark that looks like Freddy Krueger. And I think that one of the ideas for the sequel, and I could be wrong, was they wanted to do the USS Indianapolis. They wanted to make that into a film, Quint's speech from the first movie. I could be wrong, but I thought they mentioned that in the making of this film, which you do have on the DVD here. You have some good features. You have the making of Jaws 2, Jaws 2 little segment by Keith Gordon where he talks about his character, his part in the film, the music of Jaws 2, deleted scenes, production photographs, storyboards. So, again, you do have a couple of nice features. And the making of Jaws 2, I think it's like 45 minutes long. So, they talk about, making the sequel and, one or two of the ideas they had for the film. And again, I thought they mentioned the USS Indianapolis, that they wanted to make that for Jaws 2, or that was an idea. I could be wrong. But get into the cast, Roy Scheider, he's great once again as Chief Brody, and he definitely, holds the film together. It was nice to see him back, even though he didn't want to come back for the sequel. It was still cool to see him back. And, I love that character. I love Roy Scheider. Lorraine Gary, she's back as the wife. And you can say that you get a little bit more of their relationship here, which they did in the first movie. I think they covered, some aspects of the relationship and some good family moments. And, here, Lorraine Gary, again, she's good as the wife. And, the kids, at this point, they've been, they recasted the kids. You have Murray Hamilton as the mayor. He's back. And no Richard Dreyfuss, which, that's one thing that, definitely I think would have helped the film if Matt Hooper, if that character appeared in the film, which I know they made a little reference to the character in Jaws 2. Like there's a scene where Chief Brody's wife is talking to Hooper on the phone, but it would have been cool to see that character appear maybe in the beginning of the film, which I know Richard Dreyfuss, he was probably working on Close Encounters at this time, so maybe his hands were tied, but he could have grabbed him, for like a quick appearance in the film, in the beginning. It would have been cool to see that character again, Matt Hooper. I think that it would have helped the film even more. But still, at least you have Roy Scheider there. And, I was trying to think. And then you have this other character that works with the mayor. I forgot the character's name. But, I think she's he's the boss of Chief Brody's wife. And I didn't mind that character. But, getting back to the mayor character for a second, that's one of the things about the film that kind of gets me, when I watch this movie is, the mayor doesn't believe, Chief Brody, that there's another shark out there. And I'm like, did you not, what about what happened before? Did you forget about that? Like, did the mayor just suddenly, get amnesia or something? I don't know. It's like one of those things where, okay, this happened before. You've been terrorized before by a great white. Why is it so hard to believe now? Do you not remember the events of the first movie? Do you not remember what happened a few years before? Where we had, some victims and we had to hire Quint to go out and with Brody and Hooper and go hunt for the shark. Why is it so hard to believe now that there could be another shark? But, so again, that's one little aspect of the film, with the mayor that, yeah. But he still did a good job, Murray Hamilton. He still does a good job here. But again, that's just one thing I can mention as far as like a nitpick, if you will. And yeah, you can mention like some of the teenagers, you know, okay, it's cool to see, an early role, with Keith Gordon. But you can say, yeah, some of the teenagers are, I, if I could be honest, I care more about Roy Scheider than I did the kids. And that doesn't take away from the film, but yeah, at the same time, like if you didn't have Chief Brody in this film, if you didn't have that character, uh, I wonder if I would care as much. Like if you take out Chief Brody, that character, and that's something to think about, with this film. Like if you didn't have that character in here, and if you just had the kids, maybe it would have been still okay. But uh, I mean, the kids, the teenagers, they do fine in that last hour or so. Which in there you do have a cool scene where Jaws takes down a helicopter. That was a cool scene. I like that scene. Uh, but I would say to me, I cared more about Chief Brody than I did the kids. If I could be honest. I mean, I understand at this time they wanted to do something different. It was more about, again, it feels more like a slasher. They were trying to, follow the slasher trend at this time. I mean, the same year you had Halloween come out. So, I think about that movie. So again, it's just one of those things like, okay, the kids, they do fine, but they're not the strong point. To me, the character of Chief Brody was more of the strong point. And it was nice to see him back. And, the kills, are fine. They're memorable kills. I mean, the water skier scene, uh, and then the shark attacking the boat and then getting burned. And then you have the scar. And you have a couple of decent kills with the kids, and you got the shark, taking down the helicopter, and then you have to mention, the comeuppance of the shark where he bites the cable, and he gets electrocuted. Great comeuppance. Uh, I enjoyed that, and yeah, you can say, the suspense and the tension is done better here, but I still enjoyed the kids, being pursued by the shark. And you got the one scene where you have the character of Tina and this kid on the boat, Eddie, and they get attacked, and Eddie falls into the water, and his character gets dragged to the boat, and he's hanging on for dear life, and he pulls off a piece of the boat because the shark is that strong. I'm like, okay, that's a cool way to emphasize, the strength of the shark. And, the shark is not playing around. He's pretty much, the Freddy Krueger of sharks. So that was a cool little scene. And, yeah, I mean, I didn't even talk about, my review of the first film, Amity, the backdrop, which, the backdrop of the film being Amity Island. And I enjoy, I would like to go there someday. Martha's Vineyard, which they went back here and shot the film, the sequel. But, Amity, definitely you can say, in a way, is his own character. I mean, it definitely is an aspect of, this film, which stands out. And, the look of Amity, is, again, looks like such a cool place. But, yeah, I mean, I was trying to think what else I can mention with this film. But, yeah, I mean, Jaws 2, at the end of the day, I enjoyed the film. Yeah, I mean, I can say it would have been cool maybe if you had, like, Matt Hooper appear in the film for a little bit in the beginning. Yeah, the mayor character, it's like, did you not remember the events from the first movie? Why is it so hard to believe now? And you do have some cool scenes in this film, some cool, interesting direction, uh, where you see the shark a little bit more, and that's one thing with this film. You do see the shark more. The shark appears, I mean, the water skier scene, I mentioned that twice, but, you get a little bit more of the shark, which is cool. And you got Chief Brody, that character back. War Scheider's good here. Again, I talk about the kids. They're fine. Uh, some of the supporting players of the first movie come back, like Murray Hamilton and Lorraine Gary, and Jeffrey Kramer as the deputy. And there's some fun moments there with the dialogue. I didn't even talk about the dialogue with the first movie, but you know, uh, you know, I talked about the speech in the first movie, but I remember there's this one scene in here because they find the camera that belonged to the divers in the beginning, and Chief Brody's like, help me look at this 908, and his deputy's like, what's a 908? 908 means get me out of here, because everybody wants to talk to Chief Brody, uh, and yes, I mean there's some cool moments like that, some fun dialogue in here between Chief Brody and this deputy, and and then later on where he tries to show the photographs to the mayor and that other character, the boss of Lorraine Gary, because the divers were able to snap a photograph of the shark, but it's kind of hard to make out. So he's trying to convince the town hall, that hey, we got a shark problem, and that one guy's like, yeah, it's something to the lens, and Scheider's like, lens my ass. The other guy's like, damn right your ass. And that's a fun little scene right there. So you get some fun dialogue in here as well. Some good dialogue from Chief Brody. But yeah, I mean, Jaws 2, again, I still enjoy the film. I think it's an underrated sequel. Again, in a way you could say it takes it takes that slasher route, in a way, because although you have these kids in there, but Chief Brody's back, and so yeah, and then you have the Freddy Krueger look with the shark, Scarface. So yeah, Jaws 2 to me is a worthy installment and a good, enjoyable, sequel. Again, not as great as Jaws, but I do feel, again, it's underrated. And I thought, it was a fun, follow-up. So that's my review of Jaws 2. And next up, I'll be reviewing Jaws 3 or Jaws 3D. So stay tuned for that, and we'll see you later.